Hi, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're fortunate enough to have Abranda to be doing our presentation for us, our continued Agentforce concepts. She's going to be doing a greater dive into the managing of and monitoring of agent adoption, as well as the testing center and some of the custom agent actions. Abranda, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, everybody, we are jumping into part 2 of Agentforce concepts. Leah did part 1 last week and did a fantastic job. So if you haven't gone back to watch that recording, I would definitely recommend doing so. And today we're going to touch on some of the additional Agentforce concepts. This particular topic takes about 30% of the exam, and I will give you a heads up that when you start studying this particular section, give yourself ample time, because there are many pivot points where you can rabbit hole if you really get curious on a particular concept. So just be aware that can happen. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Really quick, just because this is recording, I always want to make sure that we are compliant. I do not work for Salesforce. I do not speak on the behalf of Salesforce. Don't make any purchasing decisions based on what you've seen today, and always do due diligence, because what we're talking about today may change in the future. So I'm not going to give you time to read all of the details here, but it is available if you want it. So to jump in, our agenda today is Agent Studio and Agent Builder, standard and custom topics, same with actions, testing center, and monitoring and managing agent adoption. To make some topics that could be boring a little bit more fun, we're going to go through this as a real life use case of a celebrity being interviewed by an interviewer. So our interviewer is Agent Appy. She's our Agentforce agent. Our interviewee is the celebrity Ruth the Architect. And of course, any celebrity is going to have a PR rep, and that is Brandy the Fox. So I will be referring to these characters throughout the presentation today. All right, to jump in, Agent Studio and Agent Builder. We hear a lot about Agent Builder, but we don't necessarily hear a lot about Agent Studio. So what is it? Think of Agent Studio as the studio where Appy and Ruth and Brandy are all going to meet to do the interview. You have to find the right studio within a great big high-rise building, right? You do that by using your setup home, and you can type in Agentforce Studio. The more advanced your Agentforce toolbox becomes, the more options you will have. But for today, we'll show Agentforce agents. As with any good studio, you're going to have makeup, you're going to have hair, and you're going to have the set with the cute little sofa and the fun coffee mugs. So where is makeup? I'm going to compare makeup to the documentation center. You have trailheads, you have blog posts, and then you have the Salesforce documentation. The reason I say this is the makeup section is your documentation is foundational to Agentforce success. From there, you're going to find your way over to hair, and you're going to get styled. Down below in the highlighted blue is where you're going to find your styled agents. These are configured, and they are ready to hit the runway because they are looking good. From there, we need to make it over to the set. Remember those fun little sofas and the cute little coffee cups? You can find those in the Click New Agent. This button is going to take you into actual Agent Builder that we hear so much about. So in Agent Builder, you're going to need to select the type of agent. You're going to assign topics and actions. You're going to do things like define settings. You're going to maybe use the beta version of language settings. You're going to look at event logs, and you're going to be able to do the details. I'm not going to dive into these a lot today, but let me just give you some real life examples. Your type of agent, that's your personality that you want the agent to have. Leah did a great job last week of talking about the pre-included agents, the Agentforce SDR, the Agentforce Sales Coach, those types of agents. Think of those as the personality. Your topics and actions, those are the parameters around the interview. It's not a no holds barred conversation. We're going to stick to specific topics, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Settings, they are used to basically let your agent know, like, what's my name? What's my role? What am I here to do? language settings so that you can, translates the word that I'm looking for into any language so fans of Ruth across the globe can see and hear what she has to say. Event logs, they just are the video tracking of all of the things that are going on, and then the agent details. So let's jump into standard and custom topics. Remember the interview that we're talking about? A topic is basically just saying, here's what we can discuss. Agent Appy, as our interviewer, you can discuss Ruth's favorite brand of jewelry, and you can discuss her newfound love of yoga. But you cannot talk about that bad breakup that she had last week because it's still a sore subject. Okay? So think of a topic like that. It's really the parameter of what an agent can do. Some ways that we use topics to ensure accuracy, consistency, and conversational quality are by creating boundaries. Again, that's where you're telling Appy, the agent, as the interviewer, this is what you can talk about. You're setting context. The reason that we can't talk about the bad breakup is because they are doing some publicity stunts together and they really just want to maintain a positive working relationship. And you're defining behavior. You can ask Ruth to I lost my train of thought, to demonstrate some of her newly learned yoga moves, but don't ask her to do a flip because she's not going to do that on stage. The parts of a topic, this is one of those areas that you can really rabbit hole in. Basically, you want to know the classification description. You're essentially telling her in a very succinct manner, what topics can you talk about? Scope. You can talk about yoga and you can talk about jewelry and you can ask for some demos and some additional information, but you're not allowed to book appointments with Ruth for her yoga sessions. Instructions. You really want to make sure that when you're writing instructions, you remember that they are non-deterministic. Agents need clear instructions and start with simple. It's the phrase, keep it simple, right? That's what you want to think about with instructions. And then for one particular agent, which is the Agentforce default agent, you can use the conversation recommendations. This is optional, and I would highly suggest doing some research around what the best practices are if you're going to enable that agent. Some topic instruction best practices. Remember, agents are non-deterministic, and so you want to build those rules into the action, not the topic instructions. Less is more, build as needed. And be mindful of language choice. Remember, agents don't understand your business terminology or your processes by default. So don't use any assumptions, but also don't go too granular in your instructions. Topic best practices. Start with a standard topic and then only incrementally customize as needed. And then test, test, and test. Also, you only want to build custom topics when you really are ready to go and use those. And your agents and your team are sophisticated and practiced enough to feel confident doing so. And even then, test, test, and test some more. So adding a topic to your agent. This is a hyperlink, and I don't know if it will come through in the recording or not. So we'll ask Meredith to upload this link as well. But this is the long list of standard agent topics that are pre-configured for your agents. You can still edit standard topics, which is a big use case as far as, adding standard topics, so you don't have to start from the ground up. But that's what the best practice recommendation would be. An example of a standard topic. For our Agentforce team, if you are setting up an Agentforce for Setup agent, some standard topic examples from the list in the link above would be user access management, object management, fallback, and connected app migration. There are dozens more. Those are just the 4 that I chose for this particular example. If you are setting up an Agentforce SDR agent, some topic some standard topic examples would be send outreach. You could go as far as letting an SDR prospect. You can respond to a prospect, or you can have them manage opt-outs. Remember the topics that we gave, that Brandy, the fox, gave Appy, the agent, the interviewer, in the very beginning with the interview with Ruth. The topics were yoga and favorite jewelry. Now, when we talk about actions, we know that Appy can talk to Ruth about yoga and about jewelry, but what specifically can she talk about? So an action. Actions are how agents actually get things done. They are individual tasks. So for example, if a user wants an agent to help them write an email, the agent can launch an action that drafts and revises that email. So let's take it back to our interview use case. If Appy wants to interview Ruth about yoga, she might ask her or respond to her love for that by mentioning Ruth's favorite pose of warrior. Mentioning that pose of warrior could be related to an action within the topic of yoga. Does that make sense for everybody so far? Have I lost anybody with this analogy?
I'm still following, and I love the analogy.
Okay, perfect. I'm looking for some thumbs up. Everybody's video is over off to my left, and I'm trying to look at the camera, so I can't really see the chat. Thank you, Leah. Okay, so now you have standard actions, just like you have standard topics. So standard topics come with standard actions. You can still edit standard actions. Some of the standard actions should not be removed or cannot be removed because they are considered system actions. This is another one of those areas where I didn't find a lot of variety of resource variables. So really focus on that Salesforce help article. It gives a lot of details, okay? It also speeds up the process of building an agent if you start with standard topics and standard actions. However, we always have, in true Salesforce fashion, you have the ability to do custom actions. Again, this would be once you're familiar and comfortable with Agentforce, and always test, test, and test some more. So working with actions, a couple of things that are likely to be on the exam. Actions must be assigned to a topic. The same action can be assigned to multiple topics or just one topic, but an action isn't functional without a topic. The blue link here is the very similar format to all of the standard agent actions, just like we had the link to the standard topics. The beauty of Agentforce functionality really starts to shine when you have actions and flows come together to make that agent more than just a one-step wonder or a one-hit wonder. You really want them to be your one-stop shop for as much as you want to include within that topic. Okay. So for example, a flow might guide an agent through the process of gathering details. A flow for Appy, our agent interviewer, might be used to progress the conversation from how Ruth first found yoga and then determined that she fell in love with yoga, and then why. And you see the progression through the conversation. Think of the flow as guiding that progression through the conversation. The other point that I want to touch on is post-presentation last week, our study group, who is amazing, by the way, I love working and studying with these women. The question came up, since agents defer to an end user's permissions, what happens if an end user asks an agent to perform a task that the end user does not have permission to perform themselves? Well, it gets kind of funny, and let me give you an example of how you can do this, how this would come about. We know that Appy, the agent interviewer, cannot talk with Ruth about that bad breakup, remember? But while they're talking about favorite bracelets from the favorite jewelry brand, Ruth mentions that the bracelet she's wearing is one of her favorites, but it was given to her by Cody. And Ruth gets this teary-eyed look in her face because that's who the bad breakup happened to be with. Now, Abby has two choices. She can sit there stunned on air, like, I'm sorry, please try a different response. I'm sorry, please try a different response. But since Brandy the Fox, Ruth's expert PR agent, prepped Appy the agent by identifying a fault path in case the bad breakup was to come up, Appy, the agent interviewer, just very naturally in natural language, takes the example of the bracelet, ties it back to yoga, asking Ruth if that's one of the pieces that she loves to wear while practicing the warrior pose. Or if Ruth has examples of ankle bracelets that could be worn during yoga that don't interfere with her favorite poses. That's the type of behavior you want your agent to interact with your user, not, I'm sorry, please try a different response. So that's just kind of a fun use case of a post-presentation discussion that we had last week. I hope it wasn't too long. Okay, I have talked a whole lot. I am going to ask one question, and then I'm going to take a drink. We're just going to do a quick knowledge check. Which topic would most likely be assigned to an Agentforce SDR agent? Object management, prospect, or fallback? I'll give the group a moment to drop it in the chat or come off mute. This doesn't have to be a just me show. We've got some bright minds on this call. We have an answer of B, prospect. And Leah is correct. Our SDR agent would most likely be assigned a topic of prospect. Next knowledge check. How are actions and topics related? This one's a little bit longer, so if you're comfortable, please come off mute and give me some ideas of how actions and topics could be related. Or you can drop it in the chat too.
I'll take a stab at it.
Thanks, Leah.
So the topic should be assigned to the agent, so that way they have context on the business process that they are responsible for. And then the actions should be assigned to the topic, so that way with that context, they can actually do something, send an email, update a record, summarize a record. So
Perfect.
That's
exactly right. We need to have the two related. You can't have a really good interview if you just have the topic but no questions to support it, or responses when the interviewee answers and you can have that dialogue. That's how actions and topics are related. I'm sure there's a more technical definition of how they're related, but we're going to go with fun level today. Great job. Okay, so now testing center. We're going to switch gears just a little bit. We're going to get a little bit more technical. We hear a lot around testing use cases, testing flows, testing validation rules. You want to make sure that you test your agents for expected behavior, but you also want to make sure that you test for unexpected behavior. Agentforce Testing Center. I was searching through help documentation and all kinds of resources to find a really fantastic visual for this particular section, because I am not loving how much text I have on our slides. I really love the visuals instead, but it wasn't until the very end that I found a video. And again, that video, I don't think the link's going to come through in the recording, so I'll have Meredith upload that as well separately, because it does a great job walking through what the testing center actually looks like. But basically, here's some things that you need to know. Running tests consumes requesting credit, so make sure that you're aware of that. Only use testing center in sandboxes because it can modify CRM data. That's a huge call out to make sure that you don't accidentally end up with data integrity issues because you are trying to avoid data integrity issues or unexpected behaviors. Testing steps. this is where that video that was published by Salesforce is really helpful. It really is like a testing wizard. When you are in Agent Builder, there's a button in the upper right-hand screen that says Batch Testing, and that takes you into Agentforce Testing Center. So you add your data using the provided template, you create your test, you upload the file, and then you run your test. Okay? You can have AI help generate those test cases as well so that you don't have to be super creative. I know that Brandy the Fox and Appy the Agent Interviewer are going to be fantastic at brainstorming what to talk to Ruth about in the topics of yoga and jewelry. I'm not going to be that great, so I'm going to want AI to help me with that. The really cool part is you can run up to 10 tests simultaneously in a 10-hour time frame, and you can have 1,000 test cases per test. So interesting thing here, let's go back to our interview prep for a moment. Brandy, the PR agent, is talking to Appy, the interviewer. And they're running through, and Brandy is quizzing Appy on, can you ask about this? Can you ask about that? But in the rush of everybody getting ready for this very high profile interview, they don't have time to go through the 1,000 test cases or the 1,000 sample questions that Appy could ask related to those topics. So instead, you just batch test it, and it runs pretty quick. I don't know about you, but utterance was a term that I had not really heard a lot or interacted with before. So just know that utterance is the least amount of information that must be provided in order to run tests in the testing center. Before we do our quick knowledge check, does anybody have questions about Agentforce Testing Center? All right. Because I know that I'm not the only one that looked at that word and said, what is it? Does anybody want to take a shot at what the definition is of utterance? Very good. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've never
Meg, did you
heard
come up
the
mute?
term before until this. So I was just like really curious.
Yes, it is.
Same
It
here.
caught me off guard for a minute too.
Yeah, I never heard of it until I read the help article about it. So I will be cheating if I answer.
That's all right. I actually looked it up in 2 different formats. So the information, the definition of utterance according to Salesforce was like the natural language that's used when interacting with an agent. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. But let me get a little bit different of a definition to make sure that I understand it full picture. So then I Googled it. I'm like, all right, we're gonna use AI, and we're gonna do I think it was Gemini, to kind of gather really what is utterance and how are people understanding it. And this is a definition that I came up with that I really like, or that I found. I didn't come up with this. The text or input that a user provides to the AI agent that the agent then uses to perform their actions. That felt like a very complete definition of a term that's very new to us. So that was kind of interesting. All right, so we are on to our last section, which is monitoring and managing agent adoption. Sounds super exciting, right? We're going to tie some interview metrics into this topic. So you monitor and manage agent adoption, that's a mouthful, through Agentforce Analytics. Agentforce Analytics does use Data Cloud to help gain insights. You can use the pre-built yet customizable reports and dashboards. However, you do have to do some configuring and enabling certain features within your org to get full use case out of the included reports and dashboards. So this is one of those other areas where you can rabbit hole pretty quick, but for the sake of time, because I've already been talking at you for a while, I'll just make you aware, do some due diligence on this particular topic. The types of information that you could analyze regarding Agentforce. So we talked about utterance analysis, but like, what does that really mean? Then we've talked about some of the Some of the reporting and metrics as far as how often did our agents do the right thing versus how often did they not do the right thing? Are they behaving as expected? Things like that. So I have the technical stuff up here, but we're going to take it back to our interview for a second. So we're going to ask questions like, what does the producer of the network care about on this interview between Appy and Ruth? They probably care about viewership. They probably care about the quality of the conversation that Appy is leading and how happy Ruth is in answering those questions. How many agent blazers are watching this interview? And who are the agent blazers that are watching this video? What else is contributing to the viewership? Are the sofas the right color based on the two people's or characters' outfits? Are the coffee cups fun? Is the lighting, is it making her makeup and her hair look better? All of those types of things contribute to the success of the interview outside just the interactions themselves. Think of it like that when you're looking at Agentforce analytics. Now, I was able to find one image from Salesforce on what a potential dashboard could look like. And it's not very clear. This one is really more around the utter analysis. Or I think it's supposed to be utterance analysis. I think I found a typo on my slide deck. I apologize. But this is just an idea what it can look like. Pretty standard, pretty basic, but really understand that you can customize these as needed as well. So with that, thank you for watching today's session of our study group studying for the Agentforce specialist. Have a great day.